freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
I'm doing the best I can do with what I got. Yeah, we used to have this dinner called SOS. I am not going to tell you what my mother said that stood for, but basically it meant we've run out of everything, including leftovers, and so you get whatever I can put together. And I'm going to tell you, there are a lot of people that lead just like that. That's what we want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders.
Lifetime achievement.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training. Subscribe now for access to our...
There is a retreat coming up that I want you to know about. It's called the Story Power Academy Retreat. This Story Power Retreat is about focusing on your communication skills, taking them to the next level. Discover, develop, draft, deploy, and deliver some of the best stories you've ever learned. You're going to listen, create, connect, relax, and reflect around this beautiful lake scene in Granbury, Texas. It's a chance to rejuvenate and refresh and start over with some of the best training you can possibly imagine around storytelling, leadership, and communication. Join us, get away, and relax. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. You know, a lot of leaders, they come to the table with a lot to work with. And by that I mean they've got all the background, all the pedigree, all the education you could possibly ask for. They have just the right skill set, all the natural talent and natural gifts, the ability to be something special in the marketplace. And usually that comes because of their pedigree, their name, their lineage. Everybody knows who they are. They have a reputation. I mean, look at the Archie family. Peyton Manning, Archie Manning, Eli Manning. Archie's entire family made it superstars in the NFL. At least national championships, if not Super Bowls, if not Super Bowl rings. That talent is kind of in their bloodline, right? You might say the same thing about many U.S. presidents. In fact, I recently read, and I'm not going to tell you which one, but of all the presidents who have ever been president of the United States, if you trace their lineage back far enough, they all come from the same family. What? I thought we only did that in patriarchs. I thought we only did that in kingdoms and fiefdoms like the UK. No, apparently it happened here too. Only one president has not been in that bloodline somewhere. Now, that family tree may look like a family tree in Arkansas where it just only has a couple of branches, or it may be very elaborate. But when you come with the advantages, if you will, of the right school, the right pedigree, the right relationships, the right communities, it kind of changes things for you. In fact, I know a lot of leaders who have risen to the top, so to speak, because everything's been handed to them on a silver platter. I recently watched a movie with my wife. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was about a boss who got stranded after a plane crash in the middle of nowhere with only one of his employees, and turns out she's a big fan of Survivor and he's not so much. But even in that environment, his level of entitlement, expectation, his belief that no matter where he is on earth, he's earned the right. It's a birthright. He didn't build the company, his daddy did, but he inherited it when daddy died. But now it's his right to be in charge, for everybody to kowtow to him, to follow his lead. Let me tell you something. That would mean that leadership is more like alchemy. Painters paint. Nurses nurse. Doctors, doctor? I don't even know if that's, leaders lead, right? But we know that in all of those circumstances, there's a level of skill, there's a level of education, there's a level of involvement, and then there's this odd expectation that your ability to lead also includes the ability to work in cohorts with other humans. And if you haven't noticed this, humans in their emotions, in their psychology, in their biology, they're like little elementary school chemistry experiment sets all by themselves. Every one of them. And so when you hear this phrase, well, we just didn't have the right chemistry. We couldn't click together. We had bad vibes between us. Look, there's a lot of reality to that. I remember when I was in middle school, my dad, my stepdad were never around. By the time I got to middle school, I was trying to do science experiments, and I didn't have anybody aside from my mom who would say, I wouldn't do it like that. And so I learned, like every other middle school kid did, that if you put baking soda and vinegar in the same place, it's kind of like Mentos and Diet Coke. There's a chemical reaction to those two things, the base and the acid. And when you put them in the same place, they don't play well together. Have you ever noticed that about people? I didn't realize how much of a science experiment it was way back when I worked at IHOP. One of the things that we would have from time to time working at IHOP, that 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. shift, it was right after I got out of the Air Force, and we would have coffee pots that someone would pour the last bit out, and they didn't want to be responsible for making the next pot, so they would just leave just enough in the bottom of the pot that it was neither enough for a cup nor enough for the pot to break. Be just enough liquid in the bottom of that pot to dispel the heat in the form of steam. The problem with that was it would burn. And now in the bottom of this coffee pot, this bulbous coffee pot that's too small at the top to get your hand or a rag into, which means the next thing is to stuff a rag in there and use a knife and try to scrub it around. Coffee pots were broken on a regular basis because someone was too lazy to either empty the pot the rest of the way and start a new pot, or just take it off the burner and put it somewhere else for a minute. They felt like, I'm getting away with something by doing neither of those two steps. All right, let me just say, from a leadership standpoint, that all by itself is a chemistry experiment, because that's an attitude that someone has brought into the workplace where they're going to do what they want to do, and it doesn't matter if it benefits anybody else or not. They're going to do what's convenient to them. They're not concerned about the well-being of others. Am I striking a chord there? Anybody resonate with something like that, with working in an environment where people are like, well, I'm going to do what's easiest for me. I'm going to take the shortcuts. I'm going to bend the rules just a little bit. I'm going to climb over the corners rather than following the path of standard operating procedures. I'm going to do what's easy for me. And I'm sorry if it, okay, I'm really not even sorry if it creates consequences for other people, because it was easy for me. So now we got one person standing over there with a knife in the bottom of the coffee pot, trying not to break the coffee pot and scrub hard enough to get the burnt coffee off the bottom of the pot. And then I watched a lady walk in, one of our regular employees. She'd been around for a minute. She only worked mornings. She only did 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. She had the cream of the crop of shifts. All of the money, none of the drunks. And she walked in one morning and she saw that coffee pot there. It was starting to smell like burnt beans. And she pulls the coffee pot off. She grabs the salt shaker, takes the top off, and dumps about a tablespoon of salt in the bottom of the coffee pot. It's hot. Then she grabs a handful of ice and she throws the ice in the hot coffee pot. I'm like, that's going to break, but it didn't. And then she grabs a half a lemon and squeezes all the juice in there. And then she just stands there and swirls the coffee pot for a minute, kind of like I swirl my coffee to keep it temperate. When she was done, the coffee pot was clean. She poured out the goo that came from the bottom of the coffee pot, ice cubes still intact. In a hot coffee pot? How does that happen? But all the stuff is gone. She rinses it out with some water, starts a new pot, and carries on with her day. The whole process took about 3 minutes. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been the yahoo with the knife and the rag trying to scream at the bottom of that, just like all these other people, and nobody knew that you could just put salt, lemon, and ice in the bottom of the coffee pot and take it out. And I'm thinking to myself, what a strange combination of things to put in the coffee pot. And I remember asking her one time, why do you do that? She said, because it works. Okay. Care to elaborate? Nope, just carried on with her day. Now let me say this. Leadership is a chemistry experiment, but it is not alchemy. Leadership is about chemistry. It is not about alchemy. The theory of alchemy, and I don't think anyone has proven it yet. There have been a whole lot of people, especially with the advent of AI and other things, that will tell you that alchemy is a real deal. I'm not convinced yet. There are a lot of people who have claimed. And if you don't know what alchemy is, look it up on YouTube. You'll see some very fascinating things and some great fakes about someone who's actually accomplished alchemy. But alchemy is the concept of taking a base metal that has little to no value and making gold out of it. Do you know gold is almost $5,000 an ounce right now? Holy cow. I remember when it was like 800. Yes, I'm that old. But if you could take something like pencil lead, or the lead that you're not supposed to eat because they don't want it on your curtains or your blinds or your walls anymore because it stops 5G. I digress. But if you were to take that kind of lead and use that and put it through some kind of process and produce gold, then you've taken something that's practically worthless and made it practically priceless. That'd be quite an experiment. Leadership is not alchemy. Leadership is not about taking something worthless and making something priceless. It's not. I know there are a lot of people who believe it is. The concept that John Maxwell promotes, that Dale Carnegie promotes, that Tony Robbins promotes, is that sometimes you work with people who have no beliefs in themselves. They can't look at themselves seriously and go, I have value. No, they look in the mirror and they see only the reflection of all of their past failures. They only see what has gone wrong up to now. They only see that I tried and I didn't succeed. And rather than say the event, the incident, the combination of other elements around me, the coordination of people, the collaboration of teams, wasn't a good mix. Instead of that confession, they confess, because it didn't work, I am a failure. Not I did fail, but I am a failure. And the minute that happens, you may have gold pretending to be lead. You may have a priceless someone who has convinced themselves they are worthless. Now, it starts as a subconscious story in their head and then begins to penetrate their emotions, their belief system, their thought processes, the results that they wanted, not what they got. And as a result of that result, they give up, they quit, they demean themselves. Now, that's alchemy, or even alchemy in reverse, if you want to look at it in that simplistic term. Here's the reality, though. It's all about chemistry. It's about that internal chemistry, that drive, that ambition, that what is the makeup of this thing? See, the reason the lemon, the ice, and the salt all have to go in proportion into the coffee pot is this. The lemon provides the acidic nature to break down the coffee bean that has become coagulated because of the heat. The lemon citrus begins to do that. But the lemon citrus itself, while it begins to do that breakdown process, will not scrape the bottom of that pot. The ice has to do that. Well, the challenge is when you put ice in a coffee pot to use it as an abrasive nature, ice in a hot coffee pot, well, yeah, it melts. So how do you keep the ice from melting? The lemon juice isn't going to do that. The lemon juice is there as an astringent. The ice is there as an abrasive. So how do you keep the ice from melting? That's what the salt is for. The salt lowers the melting temperature of the ice, making it even harder to melt, makes it stay frozen longer. So the salt together with the ice keeps the ice abrasive, and the lemon is the astringent to break down the beans. And together you can clean the inside of a coffee pot with lemon, ice, and salt. That's a pretty fascinating science experiment. Now let me ask you this question. In the work environment, in the home environment, in your personal environment, where you lead, if you were to try to categorize the type of people that you're around, are there any of them that would kind of fall in those categories? One is the astringent, one is the abrasive, and one is the one that changes the temperature in the room? Are you one of those three? Do you contribute to that chemistry experiment? Or are you the chemistry that when you walk in the room, you're like the baking soda and vinegar and together it's a mess? See, I had someone who had come to rebuild our house after a small fire, and while he was doing some construction, he saw me trying to figure out this science experiment. And no joke, we ended up with a volcano that weighed 65 pounds. It took 3 of us to get it in the car. But on a piece of 4x4 plywood, he and I together built a volcano of cement and chicken wire. It had a nice little tube in the top. It had a place where you could drop in the red food color, and a place where you could pour in the baking soda, at a place where you could add, at whatever pace you wanted to, the vinegar, and it would bubble over like lava. And we had already crafted into the concrete the channels for the lava to flow, so it didn't just go out the top and then run down one side. No, it ran in directions all the way around the volcano because we scraped them in with a knife. And we spent a lot of time making this thing look pretty, and took it to the science fair and got pretty good recognition for it. But it took the understanding of how these chemicals come together and then creating a foundation for them to operate together and putting them on display in a way that other people could look at it and kind of be excited about that. And I wonder, when you lead, are you aware of the chemistry within your organization? Have you created channels and paths for them to interact, for them to express, for them to flow in the way that is natural to them without being Mentos in a Diet Coke bottle with the lid on too tight? Eventually it's going to explode. See, a lot of times what happens is leaders try to build a policy around their own style. They build a policy around their own level of expectations. And the result is everybody in the room, everybody in the organization, everybody in the company has to conform to flowing the way the leader flows. Look, if we were all burnt coffee, we would all stay in one place and stink to high heaven. If we were all ice cubes, we would all eventually melt and reconstitute ourselves into a liquid and eventually evaporate. If we were all salt, maybe we'd become the Dead Sea. If we were all lemon juice, well, we'd be a little sour, cause people to pucker funny. But together, we have an impact in the world. Together, when our chemistries interact with each other, they do something different. That's really the whole point. And when I say leadership is chemistry, it's not alchemy, the anticipation is not that I'm going to take you from a useless lump of lead or coal and make you into something spectacular that you are not now. Now, that may be the end result. Pressure changes coal to diamonds. Friction polishes rough stone to precious gems. That's absolutely possible. Fire takes pure silver and melts away the dross by separating at different temperatures. You know what's funny is that under high heat, gold, silver, and other fine metals, when they're refined, they don't become something else. They just become more pure in what they are. And the more pure they are, the more impurities that you cook out of them, the more valuable they become. But in order to do that, just like a piece of coal has to be put under massive pressure over a long period of time. Now, of course, you could create synthetic lab-grown diamonds, or you can have all natural ones. Which ones are worth more to you? You could have something gold-plated or gold-colored, or you could have refined gold. And from what I understand, the more refined it gets, the softer it gets. 10-karat gold's not nearly as pure as 24-karat gold. You can bite a piece of 24-karat gold and leave teeth prints in it. The more refined it gets, the more valuable it gets, the more amiable it gets. And all of that happens under the fire that continues to drive out the impurities. Leadership is not about alchemy, but it is about chemistry. Leadership isn't taking something useless and making it priceless. Chemistry is not about making something of you that wasn't there before. It's about making something better of the you that is already there. I can tell you, a lot of the challenge starts with people who look at themselves and see just a lump of coal. They have no future vision. They look at themselves and they don't realize that with the right chemistry, with the right people around me, with the right leaders in my life, with the right influence in my world, I can be better than I am. They don't see that because they've always been told who they are now, not who they could be in the future. Again, this is not about alchemy. I'm not trying to take something useless and make it something priceless. I'm trying to take something that is in a state that could be in a better state. You following me? As a leader, we've got to be able to see them in their best state. We've got to be able to look further than they can see and take them to where they didn't even know they could go. Part of my role as a communications coach is to teach leaders as they present, whether it's at the front of the room, on a stage, or just in an evaluation with an employee. You've got to be able to see for them what they can't see for themselves. You've got to be able to articulate to them what the possibilities are. And then you should, like carving the channels for the lava to flow in the side of the volcano, you should be able to create a path that allows them to be who they are. Not trying to make water run uphill, but trying to help them flow in their natural state, understanding the chemistry of the other people around them. If you can match up employees to say, hey, this one's got like more encouragement than anybody knows what to do with, and this one's always struggling just with self-esteem, what if we put the two of them together? Or what if this super positive person and this very intelligent, shy person, what if they got in the same environment together? What if we could give them some assignments that would cause them to work together until they both kind of rub off on each other? I've known a lot of people who are phenomenal extroverts, but they're also kind of on the ADD scale. And maybe that's literally diagnosable, and maybe that's the way they function. They're like little moths or butterflies. They never stay in one place for a long time. So if you give them an assignment that takes a whole lot of task getting done to be finished, odds are they're not going to. Now, they love everybody, but they want to go from desk to desk to desk to desk like a butterfly within the environment, and getting work done is just too tedious. But if that kind of person has the kind of role, the kind of job, the kind of assignment, that's not about getting tasks done as much as it's about helping other people keep their mind clear so that they can focus on tasks, or helping other people stay encouraged so when the task becomes mundane, they still have inspiration to go forward. Just somebody to light up their day. Now, you would think that would be a distraction. And again, this is a chemistry experiment. It might be that butterfly who goes around from desk to desk, from office to office, is an annoyance to a certain type of person. Duly noted. Take notes, make changes, move on. The challenge for a lot of people is they really feel like my job is to take each individual and make them into something they're not. No. Not as much as your job is to realize that each individual interacts with other individuals like a chemistry experiment, because they're their own little chemistry set all by themselves. They have hormones and life circumstances and other relationships and situational issues that change mood and attitude and feelings and emotions, and those impact thought processes. And when you put all of those things together, you might have someone who walks in the door in a great mood, and 10 minutes later, somebody has impacted them, pushed them off the rails, and they've completely lost it. And I know people that when that anxiety rises up, when that stress level gets overboard, they get overwhelmed. They can't even think clearly. Probably not a good first responder. Their chemistry and being under the pressure of a 911 operator or responding to a scene as an emergency responder, probably not going to be a good mix for somebody whose anxiety level is high. For an empath whose anxiety level is high, they might show up in that scene and not be able to triage. They just melt down. And that's not a right or a wrong, a good or a bad. It's just understanding there's chemistry here. I mean, if I put my baking soda in the bottom of my volcano and I put my red dye in the side of my volcano to create the lava effect, and then I pour in bath water, nothing. Nothing. I mean, if I pour enough in, it might overflow, but it's probably just going to be clumpy and come down the side. Why? Because there's no chemistry. There's no chemical reaction between those two things. I know that sounds so simplistic. You're probably thinking, there's no way that's a leadership lesson. No, it absolutely is a leadership lesson, because I promise you at some point in your leadership role, you're going to put two people together that are both innate. They can't inspire each other. They can't motivate each other. In fact, they're probably the two kind of people that exemplify the phrase, misery loves company. They're two miserable people, and they're just going to be happy being miserable. They're going to one-up their own depression. Well, I had XYZ happen to me. Yeah, well, you should have seen what happened to me. And they're just a race to the bottom of depression. There's no functionality in that. There's no work to get done that way. It's just not going to happen. But if you take one of those people and mix them with someone who's got constant motivation, always got a good attitude, always in a good mood, always wants to get the work done, always driving hard, you might be able to level one up a little bit. And you might be able to calm one down a little bit, not being the butterfly or the bunny rabbit going all over the place, but settle in and get the work done. Again, chemistry, experiment. You're going to have to play with this. You're going to have to put these different people together and see how they interact. And here's the truth. Maybe you have to experiment on yourself. You've got to try different environments, different task assignments, different job descriptions. Here's one for you. If leaders lead and nurses nurse and painters paint, how do you finish the statement, I am fill in the blank? I am a leader who leads. I am a nurse who nurses. I'm a painter who paints. I'm a chemist who chemistries. If you can't answer for yourself that I am statement, maybe you're part of the chemistry experiment gone wrong. Maybe you need to reconsider, how do I, as a leader, fit into this picture? What role do I serve? What purpose is mine? And as you begin to ask that question of your team. When you better understand what their role is in the environment, you might find you need to shuffle the environment a little bit. 30 years ago, Jim Collins said, you got to get the right people on the bus, and you got to have the right seat on the bus. I still have a hard time with that illustration because there's only one driver. The rest of the seats are whatever. They're all passengers. So I don't care what seat you're in. If you're not driving, you're just on the bus. But I get where he was going with that. I like better the Patrick Lencioni's 6 Types of Working Genius. And when we think about what people are crafted for, what they were created for, what their natural bent is. It's not just personality, it's the work they love to do. If you can put those two things together, you've got a chemistry experiment that could be off the charts good. You could get the best out of your people and invest the best in your people at the same time. You could see them emotionally, mentally, intellectually, psychologically thriving and doing better work. It's not just that they feel good, but they feel good because they're more productive. And they're more productive because you have the nature of them more aligned with the things that they're doing. Again, this is not alchemy. It's not one set formula that takes a base metal and makes priceless gold out of it. This is a chemistry experiment. Leadership is a chemistry experiment. Don't just take somebody's resume and think you know exactly who they are and what kind of job they need to have. Get to know them as a human. Figure out exactly what their makeup is, and then build that interaction between them and the people around them, between them and you, between them and the work you need them to do. And I think you can find a whole lot better in them, oftentimes, than they know is in them all by themselves. I challenge you to do a little science experiment with your people. Don't just presume that the resume covers it all. Take the time to get to know them. What's their makeup? What could they do differently? What could you do differently? I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan